Howdy all, it's Ramjet here once again. Um, well, things kind of got out of hand. I'll move my cup of coffee out of the way, you don't need to see that. So what did I do? Well, I have been kind of busy, and then before you know it, I was sort of just fixing a few things up in the library. Then I said, well, that doesn't work, so I'll just take that out. And I was just doing a bit of cleanup, and before you know it, I pretty much finished it. So, I have a changelog, as you can see. There's a few things I've done. Okay, some major changes, and I'll be updating the library and uploading everything back to GitHub. Um, I have had a contributor apparently in a recent months, last years. He went ahead and added the pedal button code anyway, so I'm not going to use his. I'll keep mine the way it is that I've been working on this week, today, and I'll upload that. So, major changes that I've done this afternoon. Well, we got the G25 working, we added some pedals, that's to the example code. We've got G27, check the pin out in the comments for details. Added definitions to allow you to toggle if you want brake force adjustment or not. So what I've done here is there is a definition for brake force enable, and if you enable that, if you uncomment these two comment lines here, what it does is it switches between, well, it switches between these three lines and these two lines, and the difference between the two is it's either going to do this with the brake force adjustment in there if you're going to use an extra pot, or if you just want to plug a set of pedals in and go, well, just leave it disabled and it'll just do a standard map and then constrain and then set the brake for you. So it's with brake adjustment, without brake adjustment, and that's what that does. What did I do next? Modified the library to make things cleaner for the sequential mode. Let me just enable that. So in sequential mode, I pulled out a whole bunch of crap that honestly just wasn't needed. So that's gear selection, sequential shifter. Okay, so I have in the library now, it basically just returns gear 8 or gear 9 for up and down. So that's a change to what it was earlier today, where it was, oh, hang on, it's oversized. Let me just transform this, fit to screen. No, bigger, make it bigger. Let's make it bigger. Let's make that bigger. And then move it across. There we go, and just move it across. There you go, that's going to be slightly easier to see for you guys, not for me. Okay, so what did I change? Yes, so and now it does gear 8 and gear 9 instead of 1 and 2. So the sequential shifter used to, when you select this sequential mode on a G25 shifter, it would replicate gear 1 and gear 2 again, and you couldn't separate that in some games. So the H pattern mode is buttons 1 through 7. The sequential mode is 8 and 9. So you can assign those differently and flick between the two on the fly, so long as you can allocate them differently in the game. So that works much cleaner, much better. It was doing that anyway in the library online, but my library on my computer was actually out of date because I do most of my dev on a different computer. Most of my dev work happens on a laptop, not on this machine, so that's why the two were out of sync. I should get better at GitHub, in all fairness. What else did I do? Added a gamepad button index. So, where before in the G25 shifter, remember I had this here at started at I-1, so we started at position 1, or the first gear would return, and then we were actually allocating that to 0. Well, no more. So I've basically got, this is the gamepad index. Yes, I could start that from 0, but I use this I elsewhere, and I'm looking for position numbers in an array. So this gamepad button here will just start at 0, and you'll see it gets used here, 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 and here. So as we step through the code, every time we assign a key or a button from a button on the shifter, it moves to the next button on the USB gamepad to assign. So just a little bit easier to track, a little bit easier to read, more so. I could have made it a little trickier, but it's easier for you to read, basically. What else did I do? Rework the handbrake mode. Okay, so this was a little bit of work. Handbrake mode never really truly worked, if you know what I mean. So it was in the other guy's code, and I could never get it to really be useful. So I've changed these values here. They weren't being used properly in the original code anyway, so they now function. I also got rid of the different types of upshift thresholds as well, so the sequential mode actually works a lot cleaner. So this is all cleaned up here. Don't worry about the calibrate mode. I haven't even started the calibration mode yet. That's something I probably will do from a serial interface, so that you could calibrate this in EEPROMs, but just for now, all of the calibration is basically here in the library. So when you download the library and you want to tune it, again, do your tuning here. Right, so the first thing I did was go to, let me uncheck that, going to the example code. At the bottom I added a check handbrake mode. Okay, G25, get the handbrake. So I'll just leave that like that. So what it does is it goes and gets the handbrake from, and it assigns the y-axis. So in order to use the y-axis, I had to enable the y-axis here, which is that one there. And yeah, so that now appears, you can see there is a y-axis box that wasn't here before. So we've got some cool new stuff. Can I show this to you as well? A new window. No, I don't want to add another window. This is painful. I should set this up before I start. Hey, window capture, new window, serial monitor. So I'm using the output of the serial monitor to show you stuff. What's this one called? It's called COM10. There you go. I'm just going to reduce that in size. Oh look, I'll just put it in the middle for now. Right there. Scroll that up to here. And what you're going to see, right, it's going to jitter around a bit, but you're going to have to forgive me for this. So there is a handbrake mode. Okay. You see, the handbrake mode can be toggled with using the. Let me get a better shot of this. Okay, so this is standard mode using the. Oh, it's mirrored. I see that now. It's mirrored on the screen. It's actually the left and the center right button. There we go. But if you watch that handbrake mode, if I push the other two buttons, it goes into one. Now watch what happens here. Okay, that's gonna. If I click on the gamepad controllers, here we go. That that y-axis now is a handbrake, and the thresholds it's using is that shifter Y value. So I've got a minimum of 200 and something. What was it? The minimum 288 threshold. So I've got a bit of a dead zone at the end, and I've got a 400 threshold. So I've got a little bit. I've got 35 points there in threshold at the top. But as you can see, I rescaled the whole thing on the gamepad test to the full 10 bits. It's a little bit jittery in the middle. I don't have a lot to play with, but it's got a full range. It's got a full range handbrake. Now, if I flick this back into shifter mode, when you push those two buttons, you'll see it pauses for a second. I did that for some button debounce, and allows everything to settle down. It also, gives you a way of pushing the button and release the button without it going through and toggling, which isn't so much a big issue because I think it would have latched anyway. But anyway, so now that we're back in shifter mode, sequential shift up and down is button 8 and button 9. And handbrake mode only works if you have sequential mode enabled, because that's the only way you get a center spring return. So I'm sorry G25 owners, unless you're using a big rubber band, at which point you can modify the library to overcome that. The handbrake modes are only going to be for the G25 people. So first gear, second gear, third gear, fourth gear, fifth gear. Should make that a song. Sixth gear, reverse gear still works. Sequential mode, eighth gear, ninth gear, and enabling the other two buttons gives you handbrake mode. Ta-da! And I think that is everything done. Do. All of the buttons. Aha! You can't do that. You can't push all the buttons because it activates. You can't slam all four red buttons down at once because you're going to accidentally enable the handbrake modes. There you go. So individually press those. So I separated those buttons anyway by 2 at a time. That way you can't accidentally mash them and enable a handbrake mode while you're racing. It's unlikely that you'd do that. I could have made them, one black one and one red one. I could have done that, but it's probably a better idea, in all fairness. Let me know in the comments if you think that's a better idea. All right, well, I can get rid of the serial monitor. You don't want to keep watching that. This thing is pretty much ready to release now. Oh, I did make some other changes. Sorry, let me catch you up on this. So, I have changed the constructor and removed those 2 LED. Let me just delete that. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of this. What I've done here, and I'll make this smaller for you to read it all, is the G25 constructor now only just has the X and Y position for the lever, data input, data latch, and data clock. I've gotten rid of all references to the LED pins. So if you're using an old version of the library, unfortunately it won't work with the new version of the library because you're going to have to delete the last 2 LED pins off the back. It's a minor change to you, but trust me, it makes everything so much easier to use. So far this looks like it's pretty solid. The big thing's always going to be how scratchy are your potentiometers, because at the end of the day, if your pots are knackered, you're gonna bounce between gears. The thresholds on this on here, these thresholds here are really at this point your only means of filtering that scratchy pots out. And if you've got overlap, okay, like they're normally pretty. Whoops, they're normally pretty good on the lower. Sorry, I just dropped my shifter, which has just slid off because I didn't tighten the lever up. Some guy with a V8 outside. Yeah, look at your potentiometers. If they're that knackered, you're normally pretty good if you're in the middle. Okay, so if you've got gear 3 and gear 3 or 4 selected, that's where all of your slack is. And realistically, if your pots are that bad, where you're still getting overlap into gear 2 and gear 6 or gear 1 and gear 5, have a look at 3D printing some kind of aligning tool. So there's a lot of these 3D mod, like 3D Rapid. I'm sure somebody on Thingiverse has done it for free. Where the 3D print, it's like a little guide, little lever guide here. Let's move this over here. That's better. So you can get it's like a little 3D printed guide where it goes forward and back, and really reduces the play. It's going to add some resistance in there. So if your pots are that bad where you can't select a gear comfortably, then maybe some kind of mechanical reinforcement is what you need here. Probably not a bad idea, in all fairness. So I think I'm done. I think I'm done for the day. I don't even know what time I started this morning, but one thing led to another, and before you know it, I've rewritten a good chunk of it and done probably about 3 hours of video footage. So I best go spend some time with the family, hey? Alright, everyone, happy Easter. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening to me waffling on. Hopefully you've found this mildly interesting, maybe. I'll post this all up. Yeah, so I think this is going to be pretty much ready for everybody, but I'll post it up. Again, in your loops, you can enable pedals or disable pedals. If you want to add more code for buttons, that's ready for you to just start using up in here. So in this tab, just set up your buttons with your pin modes, do your stuff, and don't forget to, if you're going to assign them, good thing, if you're going to assign them, make sure it's after button 17. I think button 17, yeah, button 17 is the last one. So I'll tell you what I'll do. I will initialize button 17. So where is it? So this thing here. I'm going to add this in here. So if you do get to here, it's going to be button 18 is your next button. Okay. So if you want to use this and add more buttons, say you want to use some extra I/O pins or pull some pins in from an expander or something, and you want to add more buttons to this, just use this as your basic index for your buttons, and it should follow straight on after this one. Okie dokie. Alright, that looks like it'll work. I'll just compile because that doesn't auto save, checks everything as well. Fantastic. I will compile this all together into one large chunk, update the GitHub, and I'll probably do that after dinner. Thanks for tuning in, and I will catch you again sometime soon. Enjoy.